My daughter-in-law left me at the train station with no money while I had millions she never knew about. Then I signed one document that changed her life without a word. It happened on a Thursday morning. They were supposed to take me to my sister Helen's in Connecticut, a visit planned weeks in advance, agreed upon by everyone. But when we pulled into the train station, Linda barely slowed the car. My son Eric wasn't even there. "Just go inside and wait for your train." "Okay," she said, eyes on her phone. I asked her for the ticket and my purse. She acted surprised. "Oh, I thought you had them." Then she rolled up the window and drove off, leaving me standing there on the curb with no bag, no money, and no phone. Stood there stunned, watching their SUV disappear down the street. I waited, thinking maybe she was circling back. "Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing." 10 minutes passed, then 15. I finally walked into the station lobby, sat down on one of the cold wooden benches, and stared at the empty floor. I was 73 years old, and I had just been dumped like unwanted furniture. The woman at the Amtrak counter was kind. She gave me her phone to make a call, but Eric didn't answer. I left a message and sat for 2 hours, unsure whether to feel more hurt or more embarrassed. Then I took a cab home, which I paid for with the emergency $100 bill I kept folded inside my left shoe. The driver didn't say anything when I pulled it out, but he looked at me differently after that. When I opened the front door, the house was silent. They hadn't come back. In the kitchen, I found a note taped to the fridge in Linda's handwriting. "You need to start figuring things out on your own. We're not a taxi service." That was it. No apology, no explanation, not even a lie. I went upstairs and closed my bedroom door. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor for what must have been an hour. And then I stood up, opened my closet, and reached behind a stack of winter coats. There it was, the fireproof lockbox I hadn't opened in years. Inside were 5 documents. One was my first husband's life insurance payout. The other 4 were deeds, letters, and a statement from a trust account in my name. Linda never knew about any of it. Eric didn't either. They had assumed, wrongly, that I was living on Social Security and a small widow's pension, that I was a burden, that I was lucky they let me stay with them after I fell and broke my hip. I never corrected them. I let them believe whatever they needed to believe to feel better about themselves. That was my mistake, but I wasn't going to make another. I called Helen that night. She was furious when I told her what happened and said I should move in with her immediately, but I wasn't ready to leave just yet. I had something else in mind. The next morning, I called Eleanor, my lawyer for over 30 years. We hadn't spoken since before the pandemic, but she remembered me right away. I told her I needed to update some documents, and she made space for me that same afternoon. "I was wondering when you'd call," she said as I walked into her office, using my cane to keep my balance. I sat down across from her and placed the trust folder on the desk. "They left me at a train station, Eleanor. Like I was nothing." Eleanor took a breath, then reached for her reading glasses. "Let's make sure that's the last mistake they ever get to make with your name on it." We spent 2 hours going over the trust, revising beneficiaries and changing clauses. I added a condition that if Eric or Linda ever tried to challenge the trust in court, they'd forfeit every last cent. The main beneficiary became my great-granddaughter Ava, just 7 years old and already the only person in that family who ever hugged me without being told to. Eleanor also drafted a new document. It looked like a harmless summary of my estate planning, something I could leave casually on the kitchen counter without drawing suspicion. The real version would remain locked in her safe. When I got home that evening, the house was still quiet. They hadn't even bothered to ask where I had gone. I made myself dinner, grilled cheese and a bowl of tomato soup, and ate it in silence. 2 days later, Linda handed me a manila envelope over breakfast. "Sign this," she said without looking up from her tablet. "It's just a basic tax form. Eric's accountant said you need to sign for the household credit." I opened it and skimmed the first few lines. It was nonsense. Vague language, blank lines, and a spot for a notarized signature. I looked up and said, "You want me to sign this now?" Linda rolled her eyes. "It's just a form, Evelyn. Don't make it a thing." I smiled. "Of course. I just want to make sure I read it all first." She shrugged. "Fine, but we need it back today." I took it upstairs and put it in the shredder. That night, I wrote a check for $15,000 to the nursing scholarship fund at Ava's school. I called the bank and set up 2 automatic donations, one to a women's shelter downtown and another to the public library that had saved my sanity so many times over the last few years. All from the trust. All invisible to Eric and Linda. They thought I was still sitting in that kitchen, waiting for their approval. They didn't know I had just changed the course of their future. The shift happened slowly. A week passed, then 2. Linda stopped talking to me altogether. Eric mumbled hello when he passed me in the hallway, but that was it. I didn't mind. Their silence was a gift. Then one evening, Linda came storming into the kitchen with a white envelope in her hand. "What is this?" she asked, voice sharp. "What is what?" I replied calmly, turning off the kettle. "This letter from your lawyer," she snapped, waving the paper. "About changing your power of attorney? About closing the joint account we set up last year?" I turned to her and said, "Yes, I had it closed. I didn't see any reason for it to stay open." Her eyes narrowed. "You're hiding something." "I'm protecting something," I corrected. She stood there silent for a moment. "You know what? You want to play that game? Fine. Don't expect us to help you anymore. We're done." Walked out. I didn't say a word. The next morning, I made an appointment with Eleanor to finalize the last piece. A revocable living trust with Ava as sole successor. I added a note. To be released only after my death or upon formal disownment. As I signed the document, I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt clarity, relief. That weekend, I quietly packed a small suitcase. I left a note on the table. "Thank you for the roof over my head. I won't be needing it anymore." Then I left. They would only understand what I had done weeks later, when they found out I had moved all my assets, changed every access point, and disappeared without a trace. By the time Linda read the document I did sign, the one that sealed the trust permanently away from their hands, it would be too late. They thought they left me behind at a train station. They didn't know I had already boarded a different train entirely. I didn't leave town right away. I stayed for another 12 days, quietly without announcing anything. I slept in the guest room at Helen's, cooked breakfast every morning, and walked her dog around the block each afternoon. Like I had always lived there, it wasn't dramatic. It didn't need to be. I had already signed the one paper that made everything irreversible. Helen didn't ask many questions at first. She knew me well enough to give me space. But on the 3rd night, she finally sat down, across from me and said, "Evelyn, what did they do this time?" I told her everything. The station, the envelope, the fake tax document, the years of eye rolls and being treated like I was just one step away from the nursing home. When I finished, she stared at me without blinking for a long time, then said, "I hope you burned their lives down." "I didn't," I answered, "but I made sure they can't use mine to build theirs." That weekend, I returned to the house, the one I had shared with them for nearly 8 years. I still had a key. I entered quietly, just after noon on Saturday. The living room looked untouched. The house felt colder than I remembered. I didn't go back to sleep there. I had no intention of staying. I just needed to collect a few things: my photo albums, some clothes, and the box with the papers I had stored behind the old sewing machine in the garage. As I was packing the last bag, Eric walked in through the back door. He stopped when he saw me, surprised. "Mom? What are you doing here?" "Just picking up my things," I said. "You couldn't have called? You didn't answer the last 3 times I tried." He frowned and stepped further into the kitchen. "You've been acting really different lately." I zipped the bag. "No, Eric, I've been acting exactly the same. You just stopped paying attention." He didn't say anything for a while, just stood there watching me. Then he asked, "Why did you close the joint account?" "Because I didn't want my money mixed in with yours anymore." "That's not what we agreed when you moved in." "No," I replied. "It's what Linda proposed. I never agreed. I was recovering from surgery. She handed me forms and said, 'Just sign here so we can help manage things.' I didn't know you'd be using it like your own wallet." "That's not fair," he said. "What's not fair," I replied, "is being told I'm family only when you need something signed or paid." He looked genuinely rattled. "Mom, you're being kind of hostile." "No," I said calmly. "I'm being clear." I walked past him without waiting for permission and headed toward the front door. Just as I reached it, Linda came down the stairs holding a toddler's sweater, Ava's, and stopped in her tracks when she saw me. "Well," she said, her voice tight. "Look who showed up." I ignored her tone and kept my eyes forward. "Suppose you're here to stir things up again," she said. I turned around slowly. "No, Linda. I'm here to leave, properly." "Good, because I don't think it's healthy for Ava to be around someone so manipulative." I looked at her for a moment, and all I could think about was how easily she lied. How confidently she turned everything around as if I were the problem. "I hope she grows up nothing like you," I said. Linda stepped closer. "You're not her parent. You don't get to decide how she grows up." "No," I said, picking up my purse. "But I made sure you'll never benefit from the money that was meant to help her." Her mouth twitched. "Excuse me?" I walked out. That evening, I went back to Helen's and told her it was time. Time to cut the cord completely. Time to file the last paperwork and remove my address from everything connected to that house. The next morning, I went to Eleanor's office, and we finalized the updated mailing addresses, the removal of Eric's emergency contact access, and the legal notification that I was no longer residing in their household. I want to make sure they can't represent me on anything. Health forms, taxes, insurance, nothing. Eleanor nodded. "It's all done." 3 days later, I received an unexpected message. It was a voicemail from Eric. "Mom, I think we need to talk. Can we do dinner? Just the 3 of us?" Helen heard it too. She raised an eyebrow. "You going?" "I am," I said. "We met at a restaurant near downtown, somewhere they liked because the place offered valet and served overpriced salad. When I walked in, they were already seated. Eric stood up halfway, then hesitated. Linda didn't move at all. "Thanks for coming," Eric said. "We just wanted to clear the air." I took my time unfolding the napkin, letting the silence stretch. "All right, clear it then." Linda went first. "We feel like things escalated too fast, that maybe there were misunderstandings. Maybe you misunderstood our intentions." I said nothing. Eric added, "We know things haven't always been perfect, but we thought you trusted us. I mean, closing the account without warning? That hurt." "What hurt," I said, "was being abandoned at a train station." Linda leaned forward. "You know we were running late. It wasn't malicious. You didn't communicate properly about your travel times." I blinked slowly. "You left me there without a wallet, without a phone, on purpose. I wasn't confused. I wasn't fragile. I was discarded." Eric tried to diffuse. Let's not get into details. We're here to move forward. I smiled for the first time. Great. Then let me ask something. Did you notice anything strange in the last envelope I left on the kitchen table? Linda froze. What envelope? The one labeled important. Open immediately. I didn't see it, she said quickly. Eric looked confused. Wait, what envelope? I pulled a second copy from my purse. This one. They both leaned forward. Linda snatched it and began reading. I watched her eyes dart across the page. Her hand trembled slightly. She passed it to Eric without saying anything. He read it slower. When he reached the end, he looked up at me with something close to panic. This says you moved everything, that you revoked our access to the estate documents, that you're placing everything into a new trust under Ava's name, with specific provisions that exclude us? I nodded. You can't do that, Linda said. I already did. But we're family, Eric said. This isn't how families work. I leaned in slightly. Then maybe you should have acted like one when I needed you. They didn't. Speak for a while. The waiter came by. No one ordered. Linda finally said, You're making a mistake. You think this punishes us, but you're isolating yourself. I stood up, placed my napkin on the table, and looked at them one last time. No, I'm protecting myself. Then I left. I didn't look back. They had no idea that the next letter they'd receive would be from Eleanor's office, or that the next time they'd see Ava's name associated with a fund, it would be in a scholarship registry, not a family savings account. They thought they could manipulate me forever. But I had finally signed something that couldn't be undone, and they didn't even realize that dinner was the last chance they had to stop it. The letter from Eleanor's office was sent 3 days after that dinner. I didn't ask for it to be urgent. I didn't need it to be. The content spoke for itself. It was a formal notification titled, Change of Trust Authority and Legal Intent. It explained in plain language that I had moved the majority of my assets into an irrevocable living trust under the sole future control of my great-granddaughter, Ava May Carlisle. It stated that Eric and Linda were no longer listed as trustees, power of attorney, medical proxies, or emergency contacts. It clarified that any attempt to interfere, dispute, or request access to any financial instrument in my name would be met with a pre-authorized cease and desist letter and, if necessary, a full legal proceeding under statute. Eleanor's letter was thorough. It was also quiet. No drama, just a firm, final door closing. The call came at 8:42 a.m. on a Monday. Helen was pouring coffee when my phone lit up with Eric's name. I let it ring. He called again at 9:15, then Linda's number at 10:02. I didn't answer either. I wasn't interested in explanations. I had heard all their reasoning before. You misunderstood. You're overreacting. We didn't mean it like that. None of it mattered anymore. By 1:30, my voicemail was full. Helen checked the screen when she came back from the grocery store. Still ringing? I nodded. Let them. That night, we watched a cooking show and made sandwiches for dinner. Around 7 p.m., my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message. From Eric. Mom, please, we need to talk. Can you at least tell me why? I didn't respond. I didn't need to tell him why. He knew exactly why. He just didn't want to face it. The next day, Eleanor called. They received the letter, she said, her tone clipped and neutral. I figured. Linda called my office, left a long voicemail accusing us of manipulation and coercion. She said you were confused, that maybe you weren't in the right state of mind to make those decisions. I said nothing. Eleanor waited. Then she continued. Reminded her that you passed every cognitive assessment last year. I reminded her that you initiated this process step by step over multiple weeks. And I reminded her that your signature was notarized twice, by an independent third party and again in my office. She's going to push, I said quietly. She can push all she wants, Eleanor replied. Everything's airtight. After I hung up, I sat with that phrase in my mind. Everything's airtight. Not perfect, not peaceful, but sealed. Helen came in and sat beside me on the couch. Did they finally back off? No, they're just getting started. By Friday, it turned into a full campaign. Linda posted on Facebook. It wasn't direct. She kept it vague. Something like, it's devastating when people you love change in ways you never expected. But God sees everything. The truth will always rise. I knew it was about me. So did anyone who had known us long enough to connect the dots. Eric didn't comment, but his sister, my daughter Claire, liked the post. That stung more than I expected. Claire and I weren't close, but we'd kept things civil over the years. She lived in Arizona, had her own life, barely involved with the family. But still, seeing her quietly take Linda's side felt like a little crack in something I thought might hold. I didn't respond. I didn't text her or call. I just stared at the screen, then closed the app. They wanted a reaction. They wanted me to break the silence and defend myself. I wasn't going to. Instead, I wrote a second letter. One not from a lawyer, not filed or registered. Just a personal letter addressed to Eric. I didn't send it. I didn't even seal it. I just left it sitting on the table at Helen's, folded neatly, the way my grandmother used to do with birthday money. In it, I wrote this. Eric, you keep asking why. You keep pretending not to understand. So let me tell you. Not because you deserve an answer, but because I need to say it at least once in plain terms. You left me. At a train station. With no cash, no ID, no phone. You ignored my messages. You let your wife speak for me for years. You watched me shrink into a background prop in your house, useful only when signing forms or watching your daughter. And when I finally stood up for myself, your only concern was access to what you thought you were entitled to. You were not entitled. You never were. The money is not yours. The life I built before you were born is not yours to spend. And Ava? She's the only one who treated me with warmth. Without an agenda. That's why she gets the trust. You get the silence. Mom, I folded it again and tucked it into the drawer beside my bed. I didn't know if I'd ever mail it, but just writing it made something settle inside my chest. The silence didn't last. The following week, Helen answered a knock at the door. It was Eric. He stood in the entryway holding a manila folder and a paper grocery bag. He looked thinner or maybe just tired. Helen glanced back toward the kitchen. Evelyn, it's him. I walked to the doorway, slowly. Eric stood stiff, unsure whether to step inside. Can I come in? No, I said calmly. He swallowed. I just wanted to bring you a few things you left. And to talk. I looked at the grocery bag. It had a few sweaters, a scarf, an old book I used to read to Ava. Things I hadn't asked for. I nodded toward the porch swing. You can sit there. I'll stay here. He obeyed. Sat down like a schoolboy waiting to be scolded. He placed the folder on his lap and looked at me. I read the letter. I said nothing. You really think we don't care about you? I looked at him carefully. I don't think. I know. He shook his head, exasperated. Linda gets intense, but we've always tried to include you. Maybe not perfectly, but we never wanted things to get like this. I kept my arms crossed. You stood by and watched it happen. That's not fair? Yes, I said. It is. He opened the folder. Inside were printed bank statements, a few photos, something notarized. This, he said, is a proposal. I almost laughed. I talked to Claire. We think we could help manage the estate together, as a family, if you just rescind some of what was signed. Not all. Just enough to make things right. I stepped forward and took the folder out of his hands. I flipped through it quickly. It was exactly what I thought. A repackaged power grab, dressed up as reconciliation. I handed it back. No. He looked up at me, confused. Just like that? Just like that. He stood up, folder in hand. You really want to die alone, Mom? I opened the door wider and looked him straight in the eyes. I'd rather die alone than be surrounded by people who only showed up when the checkbook opened. He didn't reply. He didn't beg. He didn't slam the door. He just walked down the front steps and disappeared around the corner. I closed the door, turned to Helen, and said, "That's the last visit." And I meant it. For almost 2 weeks, there was silence again. No calls, no voicemails, no texts. It felt like the eye of a storm, not peace, but a pause. I spent the days helping Helen with her garden, going to the senior center twice a week, and cooking dinner without checking over my shoulder to see if anyone disapproved of the seasoning. At night, I slept without earplugs or tension in my jaw. But then a card arrived. It wasn't from Eric or Linda. It came from Ava. It was simple, crayon handwriting on a folded pink note card with a sparkly sticker in the corner. I miss you. Grandma Evelyn, Mommy says you're on vacation. Daddy doesn't like to talk about it. I told them I wanted to write to you anyway. I hope you're not mad at us. I love you very much. Love, Ava. The envelope had no return address, just her name and the street name written with help. It had Linda's handwriting all over it. Careful, measured, probably supervised. I read it twice, then again. That night, I sat at the dining table and drafted a reply. It was short, but honest. Dear Ava, I miss you too. I'm not mad at you. Adults sometimes make confusing choices, and I needed a little space. I love you, and I always will, Grandma Evelyn. I didn't send it. Not yet. Instead, I walked down the street the next morning to the mailbox and placed it in the slot without the envelope. I knew Helen's neighbor across the street, Fran, still worked at Ava's school. She'd see the card, and she'd make sure it reached Ava directly. I didn't want Linda intercepting anything. Not anymore. 2 days later, Eric called again. I let it go to voicemail. Then Linda texted me. Ava's been asking nonstop to see you. If you're going to ignore the rest of us, fine, but don't punish her. I didn't reply. Later that evening, Helen and I were watching TV when her doorbell rang. It was Claire. She stood on the porch holding a plastic container of lemon bars and a tight smile. I figured you wouldn't come to us, so I'd come to you. Helen stepped back, surprised. I stayed seated but didn't tell her to leave. Claire walked in, set the container down, and stood awkwardly near the table. I'm not here to argue, she said. I'm not even taking sides. I just think everything's gotten out of hand. That's because you've been watching it from Arizona, I said. She winced. Fair, but I didn't like how Linda handled things either. And I told her that. I raised an eyebrow. Did you? Claire hesitated. I did. I didn't think you'd cut everyone off like this. I didn't cut Ava off. No, but you cut off everything else. I had to. Claire sat down. Eric's losing it. He won't say it, but I can see it. Their finances are in a mess. They thought they had your support, and now? Now they don't, I said. She nodded slowly. There's a dinner next Saturday. Just family. No surprises. I'll be there. Ava will be there. Just, please come. I didn't answer. She stood up, wiped her hands on her jeans. I'm not saying this fixes anything, but it might be good for Ava. She misses you. After she left, I sat in the same spot for over an hour. Helen asked once, You thinking of going? I said, I don't know. But I already did. I arrived early. It was at Eric and Linda's house. The same house I had cleaned after they had Ava, the same one I helped pay off after Eric lost his job 5 years ago. I stood on the front porch and waited. When Linda opened the door, her expression didn't match her words. "You're early," she said, then quickly added, "But it's good to see you." I walked past her without responding. Inside, the table was set for 6. Claire was already there, sipping water. Ava was sitting on the couch watching cartoons. When she saw me, she jumped up and ran to hug me. "Grandma." I knelt, slowly, and hugged her tight. "Hi, sweetheart." She looked up at me. "Are you mad at Mommy and Daddy?" "No," I said carefully. "I'm just not happy with some grown-up choices." She nodded, then asked, "Are you staying for dinner?" "I am." That seemed to be all she needed. She ran back to the living room. Claire motioned to the dining table. "Come on, let's sit before Linda burns the rolls." Dinner was awkward. No one brought up the trust. No one brought up the account. No one mentioned the letter. We talked about school, Helen's tomatoes, the weather. Eric tried twice to steer the conversation toward how things used to be, but I didn't bite. Halfway through the meal, Linda stood and cleared her throat. "I just want to say something." Everyone froze. "I know we've made some mistakes," she began. "And maybe we didn't always handle things the way we should have. But we do care about you, Evelyn. And we hope, really hope, we can move forward." I looked at her, then at Eric, then at Claire. "Is that what this dinner is for?" I asked. Claire quickly interjected. "It's about family, just seeing each other again." I put my fork down. "Then let's be clear," I said. "I'm here because of Ava. She deserves to know that her grandmother didn't disappear. She deserves to see that not everyone in her life plays games with love." Eric opened his mouth. I held up my hand. "I'm not coming back to this house. I'm not rejoining any shared accounts. I'm not reestablishing anything that I already legally removed." Linda tensed. "So this is all just performance to you?" "No," I said. "This is closure." Claire leaned in. "Mom, please, don't make this worse." "I'm not making anything worse," I said. "I'm just finally refusing to pretend." Ava came back in, holding a drawing. She handed it to me, a picture of 2 stick figures holding hands. One had white hair. "It's us," she said. I took it. I smiled. "Thank you, baby. It's beautiful." Then I folded it carefully and stood up. "I'm going now." Claire followed me to the door. So did Ava. Eric stayed seated. Linda disappeared into the kitchen. As I walked out into the night, Claire whispered, "Are you sure this is what you want?" I turned to her. "It's not what I wanted, but it's what I needed." And I walked away again. Not angry, not heartbroken. Just done. A week after that dinner, I received an envelope in the mail. Thick, white, with no return address. Inside were 3 folded sheets of paper. 2 were copies of old banking statements from the joint account I had shut down. The third was a handwritten letter from Eric. "Mom, you might feel like we pushed you away. I'm not saying we didn't make mistakes, but things haven't been easy here either. You left without giving us a real chance to explain or fix any of this. Linda's been stressed. Ava's been confused. I've been trying to keep everything together while also worrying about you. And now, after the trust, after that letter from your lawyer, we're in trouble. The house is tied up in refinancing we assumed would go through with your co-signature. Without it, we're at risk of losing everything. I'm not trying to guilt you. I'm just telling you what's happening. If there's any way we can talk, just the 2 of us, I'd like that. Eric." I read it slowly, twice. Then I walked into the kitchen and placed it under a magnet on Helen's refrigerator. I didn't shred it, and I didn't respond. I left it there as a reminder, not of pain, but of where I had been and where I wasn't going back. Later that day, Helen and I went to the bank to complete the last item on my list, transferring ownership of a secondary property I had quietly purchased 10 years ago, a modest 2-bedroom condo near the lake, used mostly for long weekends and quiet birthdays I didn't feel like celebrating with anyone else. I had kept it in my name, paid for it in cash, and left it off the radar of my children entirely. The banker was polite. When I gave her the new beneficiary details, Ava's name, under custodial management by a neutral trustee until age 25, she nodded and said, "Looks like you've already got everything in order." "Yes," I said. "I've had a lot of time to think." Before we left, I asked if the old joint account with Eric had shown any activity. The banker pulled it up. "That account's been frozen since you requested closure authorization. It was officially shut down 3 weeks ago. Any attempts to reopen or access?" 3 login attempts were blocked, she said, but nothing else. I nodded. I knew who made those attempts, and I knew what they were hoping to find. Back at home, Helen brought in the mail and handed me another envelope. This one was from the school board. Inside, a certificate confirming the scholarship trust I'd set up in Ava's name had been processed and accepted. The funds would be allocated annually and transparently, used exclusively for her future educational needs. Linda and Eric would have no access, no claim, and no way to redirect it. That night, I made myself tea and sat by the window. I stared out at the street, watching the lights from passing cars flicker across the walls. For the first time in months, I felt not just safe, but protected. Not by someone else, but by my own preparation. The next morning, Claire called. I let it go to voicemail, but I listened. "Mom, I heard about the condo. I don't know how. Much more Eric and Linda can take. I get that you're angry, but maybe you've made your point." I deleted the message. I wasn't making a point. I was protecting a future. There's a difference. 2 days later, Linda showed up at Helen's house. Helen answered the door while I was upstairs folding laundry. I could hear Linda's voice, low but urgent. "I just want 5 minutes, please." Helen didn't budge. "She doesn't want to speak to you." Linda pressed. "Then let me leave this. That's all." Helen sighed and came upstairs with a manila envelope. She dropped this off. I opened it on the kitchen counter. It was a typed letter, 4 paragraphs. "Evelyn, I won't pretend I've been a perfect daughter-in-law. I know I've said and done things that were unkind. But this, all of this, feels like a war I never expected you to start. I keep asking myself what I did. That was so unforgivable. If it was the train station, I'm sorry. If it was the envelope, I was told it was routine. If it was the money, I only ever wanted to make sure Ava had everything she needed. Please reconsider what you've done. Or at least reconsider telling others the full story, because right now we look like villains and you look like the victim. I'm asking you, one woman to another, let's fix this before it's too late." There was no apology in it, just carefully chosen language, designed to trigger guilt without accepting any responsibility. I folded it, placed it back in the envelope, and slid it into the drawer with the others. The next day, Eleanor called. Linda reached out again. She asked if you'd consider mediation. "No," I said. "Not now, not ever." Eleanor paused. "They may try legal noise, Evelyn, just to test your resolve." "I'm not worried. You shouldn't be. Everything's locked down. They're out." That weekend, Helen and I attended a school fundraiser at Ava's elementary school. We didn't announce we were coming. I didn't tell Eric or Linda. I just wanted to see her in a place where she felt happy, not caught between adults. When she spotted me near the bake sale table, she ran over immediately. No hesitation, no shame. "Grandma." I crouched carefully and hugged her. "Hi, sweet girl." She looked up. "Are you back now?" "I'm always around," I said, "even if I'm not always nearby." She nodded, then handed me a bracelet she made out of beads and string. "It's for you." I took it and tied it on my wrist. "Do you like it?" "I love it." Linda arrived 5 minutes later. When she saw me, her face froze. Then she walked straight over. "I didn't know you'd be here," she said. "I'm here for Ava," I replied. "Nothing else." She glanced around. "This isn't the place." "Then don't make it one." She took a breath. "Can we talk? Just us?" "No." She blinked. "Just 5 minutes. I gave you 10 years. Linda's jaw clenched. She looked down at Ava, then back at me. "You've changed." "I've stopped tolerating." She didn't reply. She just turned and walked away. Ava squeezed my hand. "Is Mommy mad?" "No," I said. "She's just learning." We stayed another hour. I bought Ava 2 cupcakes and a book from the used table. I didn't speak to Linda again. I didn't need to. When I got home that night, I found another letter from Eric. This one was short. "No more pleading. No more justifications. You've made your choice. I hope you're happy. Eric." I folded it and placed it with the others. I didn't feel happy, but I did feel free. It had been almost 2 months since the dinner at their house. 2 months since I said no. 2 months since I finally stopped waiting for them to treat me like a person instead of a financial safety net. And still, not a week went by without something arriving. A message, a letter, a knock at the door. Some were direct, others were dressed up as concern or fake civility. All of them were about the same thing, trying to pull me back in just enough to control the narrative or control the money. But the trust was sealed. The accounts were closed, the papers were signed. That one signature, a clean black line across a notarized document, had removed every opening they thought they had. Eric didn't know how much power he'd lost until it was gone. Linda didn't realize the window had closed until she ran face first into the glass. They assumed I would change my mind eventually. They thought I'd give in, as I always had, when guilt piled up or when they used Ava's name as a way in. But something shifted inside me. Not out of anger, and not out of pride. Just clarity. It was a Wednesday morning when I received the call from the financial office that handled the condo. "Mrs. Carlisle," the assistant said, "we received a notice from an outside party attempting to contest the title. It looks like your son Eric tried to claim a partial interest. Under what basis?" I asked. "He submitted a statement claiming implied ownership based on previous financial contribution." I sat down. "That condo has never had his name attached. Ever." "Yes, ma'am. We've reviewed the paperwork. It's fully under your trust, and your payment history is consistent and independent. We just wanted to notify you in case they escalate." "Let them," I said. "Everything is in place." I called Eleanor later that day. She already knew. "He's fishing," she said. "It won't hold." "I want to respond once," I said, "and never again." "Understood." That evening, I drafted one more letter. This time formal, notarized and delivered through Eleanor's office. It would be the final word. No more calls, no more appeals, no more confusion about where I stood. To Eric and Linda, this letter confirms that all matters relating to my estate, trust, and financial holdings have been finalized. There will be no modifications, reversals, or discussions. Ava is the sole beneficiary of the educational trust. The condo, life insurance policies, and personal accounts are under full legal protection. Any further contact attempting to influence, pressure, or misrepresent your position regarding my assets will be treated as harassment and forwarded to legal counsel. This is not out of cruelty. This is out of necessity. Our relationship, as it previously existed, is over. Do not contact me again about money, property, or paperwork. Evelyn Carlisle. Eleanor sent it via certified mail. We received confirmation of delivery 2 days later. That same weekend, Claire called again. She didn't leave a message. She just called, twice, then again the next morning. I finally answered. "Hi, I said flatly. Claire's voice was tight. He's furious, I figured. He thinks you're trying to humiliate him. No, I said. He humiliated himself when he left his mother on a curb and expected her to forget it for a slice of future inheritance. Claire paused. Linda's talking about moving. They can't keep the house. The refinance didn't go through. I know. They're blaming you. I'm sure they are. Don't you care at all? I care about Ava. That's where it ends. She sighed, and I could hear it. That low, disappointed sound that used to make me feel guilty. It didn't anymore. I just hope this doesn't follow us forever, she said. It will, I said. Because you all chose the wrong side of right. I hung up. I turned off my phone. I went for a walk. 2 weeks later, I attended Ava's spring recital. I didn't ask permission. I wasn't invited. I found the date online and showed up alone. I sat in the middle of the auditorium, 4 rows back from the front. I didn't make a scene. I didn't greet anyone. When Ava walked onto that small stage in a light blue dress, I just watched. Quiet. Focused. When she saw me in the crowd, her eyes lit up, not with surprise, but with something steadier. Reassurance. She didn't wave, she just stood a little taller, played her part a little stronger. Afterward, she ran to me before anyone else could reach her. You came. I said I'd always be around, I said. Eric stood by the exit, arms crossed. Linda was beside him, whispering something. Neither of them moved toward me. I didn't move toward them. Ava tugged my hand. Can I come see you sometime soon? I nodded. That's up to your parents. She frowned. I don't think they want me to. You can always write me letters, I said. Just like you did before. She smiled. I'll draw you a better bracelet, I smiled back. That would be nice. Linda called her name. Sharply. Ava hesitated. Go ahead, I said. I'll see you soon. She ran off. Eric didn't look at me. Linda barely acknowledged me. I walked out into the parking lot, calm, coat over my arm, the program folded in my bag. I didn't wait for a confrontation. I didn't expect a scene. There was nothing left for them to threaten. They had spent so long building the illusion of control. Over me, over the money, over the narrative. But control only works when the other person agrees to stay quiet. I wasn't quiet anymore. They lost the moment I picked up the pen and signed, and I hadn't needed to raise my voice once.